Welcome back to another episode of Shanay Meets World. Maybe you're wondering, how was I able to travel during a pandemic? I'm gonna tell you how today. Today is Wednesday, June 16, 2020, and we are 2 days before I take my flight back to the US. So we are at the CTM bus station here in Morocco, and we're sending some stuff back to Rabat. This is the car here that we'll be using to take to the airport. And so it'll be me, Musa, and our driver, who is Musa's friend. He's also helping Musa now carry some of the stuff to the CTM because Musa, say hi, little bug.
Hi.
Yeah, they're doing all the heavy lifting. I'm recording. This is Samba. Today is June 19, 2020, and it's our last day in Marrakesh.
Yeah. I'm very sad to see my wife leave the country, but that's life. And we know together what's happened.
Yeah.
And a little bit, inshallah,
You'll be
everything
coming
gonna be better.
Today is the first video that I have done since I've returned to the US. And I want to just talk a little bit about my experience traveling from Morocco to the US. It has been a whirlwind. I've only been back here for 1 week as of this past Friday. In order to give you a strong context of my story, I'll start from February 2020. February 2020, I accepted a role as Director of Operations for a business chamber, and I do talk about that in my last video. That role required me to move back to the US from Morocco. So in February, I said yes to the opportunity, and I was planning to move from Morocco in April of 2020. In February, the pandemic was just starting to spread from the east of the world to the west of the world, so America still hadn't been affected by COVID-19, neither had Morocco. Then come March, everything in Morocco shuts down. I get laid off from my job at the hotel. After that, I am essentially stuck in Morocco because they closed the borders. Although I planned to return home April 2020, it wasn't even possible because there were no flights available at that time. Because there were no flights available, it wasn't easy for me to just go to Google or go to Kayak or Expedia.com and book a flight. What the US government started doing, they actually started to arrange rescue flights. And I talk about this in one of my live videos on Instagram about these rescue flights that the US government was organizing for US citizens that were still living outside of the US during the time of the quarantine. When this happened, by the time I found out about these rescue flights, they had already been booked up by people that were trapped in Morocco. And because I wasn't technically trapped in Morocco, I have a residence card there, I had an apartment there, and I essentially had a life there. I wasn't in a rush to return back to the US, simply because I knew that we were still on quarantine and nothing was open in Morocco or in the US. So I was checking to see when I would be able to return back to the US. I was scheduled to start my job in May 2020, and luckily I was able to start working virtually right from home, which was great. And I'm still working from home. Come to find out, there was a Facebook group created for people that wanted to return back from Morocco to the US. So I followed this Facebook group, and that is where I was able to get all the information about when these rescue flights were happening. Because the US consulate, they were supposed to be sending us emails to let us know when the next rescue flight would be available, but I never got an email. So frequently I would check the Facebook group and see when there was a flight available. So at the beginning of June, there was a thread in the Facebook group saying, if you still want to return home, please DM me your email address, and I will collect 100 email addresses and names from people that want to return back home and give this to the US consulate in Casablanca so that they can issue another rescue flight for people that want to return home. So I signed up, and that flight was scheduled to return back on June 12th. By the time I got the email from the US consulate saying, we saw that you want to return back home, please confirm by replying back to this email with this specific information. So I respond back to the email, giving all of my information, also notifying them that I would be traveling with an animal, just so that they are aware that I'm planning to travel with the pet, so that I can get all of the information that I need up front. Maybe a week before June 12th, I get an email from the US consulate in Casablanca telling me that the June 12th flight was booked. How could that be? I was on the waiting list. I didn't realize that so many people needed to return back to the US. In the email, they say June 12th is booked, but we would be arranging another flight on June 19th, depending on how many people want to take this flight as well. So I say, yes, I would like to fly on the June 19th flight. So they allow me to apply for the June 19th flight, and also indicating that I will be traveling with a pet. So my flight from Morocco to the US was a private flight. It was arranged by the US government. That's how I was able to fly back from Morocco to the US without there being any international flights even available at this time. The US government arranged it specifically for US citizens that were still in Morocco and wanted to return to the US. We are currently in Ireland, and we are about to take off to DC. We had a 1-hour layover from Casablanca to the Shanay International Airport here in Ireland, and we are rolling now. We had an hour layover. They changed crews and they refueled the plane. I had a chance to wipe Moosey down. He was wet. And yes, so I had a chance to wipe him down and also use the restroom. And so now we're off to DC. And so that should take about 7 hours to arrive there. It normally only takes 7 to 8 hours from Casablanca straight to New York. But because we are on a rescue flight that was sponsored by the US Embassy, not sponsored because we paid for it, but it was organized by the US Embassy in Casablanca, we have a layover. We had a layover in Ireland, and then we go to the US from there, which is a better situation than the other rescue flights that they had sent out before. Before, they were sending people to London, and from London they were just dropping people off and telling them you are responsible for finding your own flight from London. This time they did better, and they got us flights straight from Morocco to the US with a small layover in the middle. Normally it does not take this long to get from Morocco to the US. But because we had a layover and because of the conditions that we're under, it has taken a little while longer to get back to the US. That costs more money than it would for me to normally fly from the US to Morocco. Normally when I fly, I would fly from Casablanca to New York, and that is about $800 round trip. This time it was double. It was $1,560 for me to travel from Casablanca to Ireland, and then from Ireland to Washington, D.C. Double. And I had a layover. Normally it's just a straight flight and it's 800 round trip. This was just a one-way. So you can imagine the sacrifice that I put forth in order to return home. This was also under the assumption that we would have a meal on this plane. Let me tell you about the food. They gave us sandwiches, which by sandwiches I mean bread with white cheese in the middle, in these white paper bags with water and apple and chips. Not very appetizing for a almost 11 to 12 hour flight. We got 2 of those bags. So I was quite disappointed at the amount of money that I spent to return home. And they even asked me when I booked if I was vegetarian. And so I assumed that we would have a hot meal. When I asked the flight attendant, she told me that due to COVID-19, they weren't allowed to give hot meals. On the night of June 19, I returned to the States, to Washington, D.C. Luckily, I had a friend who lives near Washington Dulles Airport. She's about an hour away. So she collected us from the airport and we stayed with her over the weekend. And that was to give me time in order to book my flight from DC area to Cleveland, Ohio. So when I got to her house, I was able to use her phone because at the time I didn't have a SIM card. My SIM card was from Morocco. So I didn't have a SIM card. I was only able to use my phone when I had an internet connection. So I used her phone to call United. I called Delta, I called American Airlines, asking them about their flights and about the price it is to travel with an animal, to travel with a cat. And so they gave me the information. And I decided to go with United Airlines because United Airlines was just an hour flight. It was a little bit more expensive than the regular standard flights for about $150 for one way. I ended up paying double that, which was $348 because I paid for economy plus, and just to have the extra leg room, and because the flight was only for an hour. So the Tuesday after I arrived, which I believe was June 23rd, June 23rd is when I planned to return to Cleveland. I get to the airport 2 hours before my scheduled flight, and the attendant at the airport tells me that my cat's crate is too big for it to go under the seat. Instantly frustrated, attitude. Why didn't you tell me that when I booked the flight over the phone? Don't you think they should have told me all the rules that I needed to follow? Because the first thing they told me was, oh, his crate is too big. Then the second thing, where's his vaccination? Boom, I pull the vaccination out. Oh, these are less than 30 days. My thinking is that if I call to say I'm specifically calling you to make a reservation for a cat, you would lay out all of the requirements that I need in order for me to meet these requirements for my animal to be able to travel with me. In my mind, this makes sense. But the lady who I spoke with on the phone with United Airlines, she did not give me this information. So I get to the airport 2 hours before it's time for me to leave, and I'm given this information. So I was told that I couldn't even fly. My $350 ticket plus my $125 ticket for my cat was down the drain. We weren't even able to fly. I was extremely frustrated because there I was, just traveled from Morocco to DC, all to return home for a work opportunity, and I'm still on my way trying to get from DC to Cleveland, and I can't even do that because I'm not given the correct information up front, and 2 hours before my flight gets canceled. So I have to think quick. What do? I was ready to return home. My friend had just dropped me off at the airport, and she's an hour away from the airport. It would be ridiculous to ask her to return back to the airport to come and pick me up. Granted, if I didn't have any other options, that would be my last resort, to ask her to come back to the airport and pick me up. But I didn't want to do that. I ended up buying a SIM card in the airport, and luckily the SIM card is going to last me for the whole month, and I have call, text, unlimited data, and everything. And it was just $70, so I paid for that. And then I went to rent a car right at the airport, and it was a great experience. I went to Avis, and the guy there, he was so kind. They gave me so many discounts. I was able to return the car from DC. I drove from DC to Cleveland, and I was able to return the car at the Cleveland Hopkins International Airport. And I had insurance on the car. I had the toll, because I went the toll route, which made it a lot shorter. It was only about a 6-hour drive versus a 7.5-hour drive. That was all covered in my expenses, and the rental car ended up being $126 total, and I was driving a brand new car, so it was so nice. I ended up saving more money than I was spending flying by plane. And so the result of me getting my flight ticket canceled, they are going to refund me, but it's going to take about 18 to 30 days for them to even give me a refund, which again is ridiculous. And the crazy part is, I've had a bad experience with United before when I was going to Puerto Rico a couple of years ago. And so I'm feeling like I won't be flying with United again. They won't be my option. The only reason why they were this time is because it was an hour flight, and I really was ready to just come home. That turned into 6 hours of me driving by myself on the road with just me and my cat. Since I have returned home, I don't really feel culture shock, not just yet. I haven't had a lot of interactions with people outside of my family. I am feeling the tiredness from the difference in time zone, because Morocco is a 5-hour time difference, so it's 5 hours ahead. So right now it would be nighttime in Morocco, and here is still the day, it's still the afternoon. So I am feeling tired, and that's all. So I think I'm feeling my senses, like just seeing a lot of things, and especially when you go to the grocery store, oh my gosh, brand overload. There's so many different brands to choose from at the grocery store. But anyway, since I've returned home, I'm okay. I'm adjusting. I do miss Morocco, I do miss Musa, and I am looking forward to the visa application being processed so that he can come here and we can begin our lives together. So that's really what I'm looking forward to mainly. I know that I'm here for a reason. I know that I have a great opportunity, and I want to be positive about it and not feel like, oh, I wasn't able to come with my husband. The good part is that we already have the visa in process, and that he will be with me soon. So I'm here now, setting the foundation for us to start our lives in the US. The reason why I wanted to share my experience of traveling from Morocco back to the US, because it was not expected. None of us expected that we would be on quarantine. None of us expected that we would be in a pandemic. When I was offered the job in February, I just thought that I would just book my flight a couple of days before it's time for my actual start date, so that I can spend more time with Musa, and as soon as I get here, then I'll be ready to start work. And that actually did not happen. So I'm grateful for the extension of time that I was able to spend in Morocco, because that meant more time with my husband and more time of us being together. So I'm grateful that I was given the opportunity to extend. I know the circumstances are not the best circumstances, but in the end it did work in my favor, because I was able to start work virtually, and I'm still working virtually now. So I'm able to get myself adjusted. I can work from home, and we actually will go back into the office the next month. So I'll have more updates about work culture in the US versus work culture in Morocco, just to compare the differences in how I worked in Morocco versus me working in the US in this office setting. I think that'll be something fun to talk about, because not many people have that experience of working outside of the country and then working in the country as well. And so there is a difference in how the work environment is, and I would like to share more about that. So if you like this video, please give me a thumbs up, subscribe, and comment. Let me know, are you planning to travel after the quarantine? I plan to travel after the quarantine, but I'm just gonna take it easy for a little bit and chill for now. But once quarantine is over, I am planning to travel. Let me know where you're planning to go after quarantine. Subscribe to my channel if you're a subscriber already. Hey, welcome back. Thank you for coming back. If you're new, I'm Shanay Braxton. This is Shanay Meets World, and I hope that you stick around. Until next time, bye.